Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Pope Metallicus, and welcome back to Rock and Roll Religion, where we have a truly epic artist for you today. Probably the greatest band to ever come out of Canada, and one of the greatest things to ever come out of Canada, period. It's just indescribably talented band, the Immortal Rush. And if you're like me and or a fan of 70s prog and heavy metal, like this band will hold a special place in your heart because everybody's heard some of these songs, but they just don't you don't understand until you've really dug into their discography just how epic this band is. And joining me on this program to journey down the early works of Rush is another huge Rush fan and friend of the channel, my internet dad, that 70s rock fan. How's it going, my dude?
It's going well, mate. At least I'm not your internet granddad.
We're not quite that age yet.
Thanks for having me on here. This is undoubtedly the greatest Canadian band ever. I don't care
know,
what
Brian
anyone
Adams
else
might
says.
be up there.
He's not a band, so
True.
um,
and our audience.
He was in a band called Sweeney Todd, who did have one or two good hits, but not quite the same thing. I mean, I guess the only other band that could be considered in the same league is The Band.
Yeah,
who were considered American, but they only had one American, which was Lee Van
Helm. The rest of them were all Canadians.
The rest were all Canadians. But yeah, Rush, no one can touch Rush. Rush, one of the greatest bands in the world ever.
Certainly in the prog rock sphere, they are absolutely untouchable as the greatest prog band of all time.
Yeah, and I would widen that to say that one of the greatest bands, full stop, of all time, and
certainly one of the greatest rock bands of all time.
Incomparable. I mean, there's nobody like Rush.
There's nobody out there who did as well as they did for as long as they did. Like, yeah, Zeppelin had some pretty high peaks. Queen had some absolutely killer material, but they weren't doing it for 40 years like Rush was.
And I think it's just the fact that they're inimitable. I mean, I know bands cover them, but there's no one like Rush. Nobody can be. No one can be
pretty secure in your musical talent to even try to cover a Rush.
Nobody could say, you know what, there's a band that's just like Rush, because there's only one Rush.
Yeah, it's like there's nobody. Like, yeah, there's like Led Zeppelin imitators out there. Greta Van Fleet being one of my personal favorites. They're an excellent band, but they're kind of an imitation of Led Zeppelin. You can't imitate Rush.
No, you can't. They're unique sound, unique lyrical content, unique levels of insane musicianship, riffs that seem to defy gravity. Like,
one of the reasons I say Alex Lifeson is one of the most underrated guitarists of all time.
I mean, some of those riffs are just like, is that really music? It's hard. It's hard, and yet they rock.
Yeah, and like they're absolutely killer riffs that just get in your head and just never go away. Like the main riff for Passage to Bangkok is still one of my freaking favorites.
But that in itself, it's funny you should mention that. I know we'll be covering all those albums. That song is also a great pop song.
Yeah.
It's rock, it's progressive, but it's got such a catchy hook.
And it's fun and lighthearted at the same time, too.
Yeah.
Like the lyricism and stuff like that. It's just got a very fun, uplifting vibe that Rush is famous for. Like, they have that very aspirational, fun vibe that just makes feel-good songs.
We could also play if you're willing to share my screen for 5 seconds, we could play possibly their greatest ever performance.
Very true. We'll have to play that before we get too far.
Just how fun they really are.
Must be the ones who start
I don't want to play too much because obviously you'll get into trouble. But
yeah, but that's the cool part is like they're such a musically talented band too, and they don't take themselves too seriously. They're not afraid to have fun with.
They had a great sense of humor, yeah, and it's funny because when they're Toronto guys, pretty much.
Yeah,
I think Neil might have been from Hamilton, which is near Toronto, so it's as good as in Toronto in many ways. And for me, Toronto's always been a kind of a cold, impersonal city in many ways. They had such good sense of humor. They just I find it hard to reconcile the fact they're from Toronto
Well,
if you know what I
weren't
mean.
they? Wasn't Geddy Lee in school with Rick Moranis or one of the
Yeah.
guys from CRTV?
He was in school with one of the two Strange Brew guys. I can't remember which one now. I think I mentioned it on the show we did, but I
Yeah.
can't
Right.
remember which one it was now. But yeah, he knew they did know each other.
Further proof that everyone in Canada knows each other.
Well, there's only 18 of us.
True. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, but yeah, I mean, I guess when they grew up in Toronto, it was a much smaller city than it is now. Now it's like 6-7 million people.
Yeah.
And it's just swallowed up all the cities around it. It's one of these ever-growing monsters of a city. Then it would have been probably a smaller scene, you know, the late 60s. So a lot
I think
smaller
these
city.
guys started in '68 when they were officially formed, and then they had a different singer and bass player originally, and then almost immediately replaced him with Geddy Lee.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, that when they started, there was 4 or 5 other guys in the band, either along with or before the guys we know, and you think, what? How would it have turned out if they hadn't just got the right 3 eventually? You know?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, how do you? It's like, and they were like a 5-piece at one point, and then
Yeah.
immediately dropped down to 3.
I think they found that 3 guys could play the same as 5 much better.
Well, yeah, if you have the right 3 guys, you can make a whole unholy amount of noise for that smaller group.
I know we're probably gonna, and again, we're probably jumping ahead, but the fact that they could, it always amazed me watching them on stage because, like Geddy Lee's playing bass, singing, he's playing bass and keyboard pedals.
Yeah, like that
And
takes an incredible
sometimes
amount of concentration just to play while singing.
yeah,
Let
he's
alone
got every
play bass with
limb
your
and
hands,
his
sing,
voice.
and then playing a keyboard with your foot.
Every limb and his voice is going at once. Yeah. Same with Neil Peart. He's playing these amazing drums, but at the same time he's also manipulating pedals as well and making synthesizer things and doing some kind of backing vocals at times.
I don't have it. I didn't pull a picture of it for the show. Unfortunately, I didn't think of it. But like, just seeing a picture of his drum kit is just absolutely insane. It's all the way around him. He's got like 85 pieces in his kit.
Well, I think he probably had to be lowered into it at some
Well,
point.
I mean, you've got like he's not just drum pieces either. He's got like chimes and all this other stuff. A gong.
And he had a full xylophone and
Yep.
some electronic stuff. Just wanted to say hi to Christian and Papa
Yeah.
Cotton and Matt G in the chat. Hey guys.
Yeah, always good to see you guys. You guys are here every week and always have great insight onto what we're talking about. And this one's going to be no different. I mean, Rush is one of those bands that everybody who knows them really knows them.
I love the overhead shots of the drum kit you were talking about, where you see.
Yeah, you get like a 360-degree drum kit, and he's like, and he'll play behind him and shit too while he's doing
yeah. I mean, he had just every possible instrument you could hit, or another manipulating that way, including
and
keyboard
he had
things.
like triangles, gongs, a xylophone, like all
And he
sorts
would
of
use
weird
them.
stuff you would never anticipate a
Cowbell.
rock band using.
You'd have a bit of cowbell in there occasionally too.
True, and that's interesting because that was the area where more cowbell was becoming popular with bands like Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah, but he's got a very prominent cowbell on certain tracks. But the Soul Assassin says, does he have cowbells on his drum? Yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
And he has lots of them. Not just one.
It's like 4,
yeah. Oh, incredible guy. And what I found interesting about him, which you watch some of the documentaries that are on the Blu-rays or DVDs, was that at some point in his career, he's a magnificent drummer, and he decided to take some time out to relearn how to play the drums in another style completely. And he had some drum tutor that he used, and I can't remember the guy's name, but a lot of it was like doing nothing. It was learning to do nothing.
Yeah,
this was first thing that he learned when he kind of relearned his entire
that
style.
much percussion work and all those drum fills and stuff like that. Like doing nothing is not an instinctual reaction for you.
He was like the Zen master of drummers in that sense.
Yeah, it's just like learning to do nothing is the hardest part.
Yeah, it is. And he said this was first thing I learned from this drum guru, Zen master drum guru, was how to play nothing.
And that's got to be kind of intimidating being his drum tutor. Like you'd have probably the best percussionist of all time, and you're supposed to be
Yeah.
teaching him.
And I can see what he was driving at, though. He'd become a superb rock drummer. He wanted to try and do something even more than that. So something experimental, the jazz elements, all these other things, world music stuff. He wanted to try and bring all of that in. So he had to unlearn some of his habits and
Yeah.
relearn new ones. And that led to some insane drumming in later years. But,
Yeah, and well, I mean, getting into the discography of the band, we start off with the only album Neil Peart is actually not on, being the self-titled by Rush, and
self-titled
this is
Rush.
really just more of a straight-ahead rock album than what they would identify them later.
It is, but it did contain, I think, or was Working Man on Fly By Night? I can't remember now.
No, Working Man is the last track on this record.
Yeah, because Working Man is a
one
track
of the first guitar riffs I ever learned how to play.
Yeah, it's a
It's
track
just
they
awesome. Just
did play
Titanic
live
epic
right to the
riff.
end of their career as well. So at least they retained some of that. But yeah, Neil's not on this. It's John Rutsey. I think you can tell. Rutsey wasn't a brilliant drummer per se. He was okay. But it's more of a, you were talking about this before we came on, this album is more of a sort of a straightforward metal album. Like Working Man's, is it got Black Sabbath written all over it?
Oh yeah, I mean,
in
it
a
sounds
sense.
like it came off of Volume 4 or Master of Reality. Like it is straight up a Black Sabbath tune. And you can hear their influences on this record quite a bit. There's a lot of Who in there. There's a lot of Led Zeppelin, a lot of Black Sabbath, especially like the first track on the record. I forget the title of it. Why I have the back of the album. Finding My Way.
Finding My Way.
Like it's like the intro to that track is like I just instantly flagged the Who to me.
I think they're and in fact it's interesting that you mentioned the Who, because when they did the 30th anniversary stuff and they did the covers album, which is a really good of all their sort of informative songs, the Who were all over that.
Yeah, and it shows on this record. Like
they were huge Who fans.
Yup. And
the Who were still
there's a lot of Who influence in.
Yeah, the Who were still a heavily actively gigging powerhouse of a band in the early 70s, so they would have probably seen them a number of times playing in Canada. They would always be playing in Toronto, so I think they did take a lot of influences from that, and you can hear it on here. It's not a bad album, but I mean it's not that great either.
Like it's a pretty solid hard rock album, and like I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it, but it's not Rush yet.
Not really. There's the odd weird touch, like In the Mood, which is
but you don't really have a lot of the fantasy elements. You don't have a lot of the more technical progression that you'd see later on in their career. This is really just more of a good, solid starting point for them.
And Alex and Geddy wrote the lyrics, which is something that dropped off pretty quickly when Neil Peart came on board.
Yeah, and you can tell, like, there's a shift in lyricism to the next record we're going to talk about, Fly By Night.
Yeah.
Like, again, it starts off with a pretty decent hard rock intro in Anthem. But you can tell there's a lot of those technical elements that were missing on the previous record that are absolutely present on here.
Well, it's an immediate difference in the drumming, quality of the drumming, but also that allowed them to do a much wider range of time signatures. And like Fly By Night, the title track alone, you can hear it's got a number of different not time changes, but stop and start sections, and more of a progressive feel immediately.
Yeah, and when you talk about like that positive, uplifting attitude, the title track's a perfect example of it. Like this is where that starts, kind of, is for Rush. Is you just have that very happy, upbeat kind of track.
Yeah, Bytor and the Snow Dog, I think, is on this album, which is again a track they played a lot live. Isn't that on this album?
I think so. Unfortunately, I don't have the rear cover for this.
Yeah, so that is probably the sort of centerpiece of this album, and that's
Yeah, I'd
first
say
of
so.
their it's the first of their extended fantasy inspired progressive pieces. It's got the stuff about Hades, and it's Styx and battle hymns and wherever, and so that's a mini foreshadowing of what you're going to get in 2112, for instance.
Oh yeah,
Um,
and that's it becomes a staple of Rush throughout their careers. You'll have one like big sci-fi or fantasy magnum opus that's kind of the centerpiece of a record, and then everything else kind of placed around it.
Yeah, but definitely that's Bytor, which they did play a lot live in later years as well, is progressive rock, undoubtedly.
And
But
I
you've
feel
also
like
got a
it's
track Rivendell. Well, you can
that's
tell what
on the next record.
I think
Oh
Rivendell's
no,
on.
that's sorry, you're right.
Yeah,
That's on this record
and
too.
that shows their. I think it's possibly Neil Peart, but probably all of them, that their cultural influences are things like Lord of the Rings.
And I'm gonna do some digging and do some research, and we are gonna do a show on Tolkien's influence on rock and metal because it's all
It's
over the genre.
all over Rush. It's all over many other bands. Well,
I
obviously
mean,
Led
Led Zeppelin
Zeppelin.
just wears it on their sleeve. Wears it on their sleeve too.
Yeah. So huge
Um,
strides in this album, I would say, for from the first one. It's not. It's almost a different band. Really,
it
it's like
really
a
it was a very
relaunch.
different sound at the very least,
I
and
do
they were
love the cover.
building to that.
I do love the cover as well. I don't know who did that artwork, but it's
Yeah, it's just a very cool album cover. Like very
very
simple,
cool.
very nothing crazy, just direct and to the point. Kind of like most of their album covers are. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing too crazy on the cover of their records. It's just kind of something
Yeah.
that'll jump out and grab. And we have another guest joining us.
Oh, we do.
First time on the channel, but a good friend of
It's
ours.
Geddy Lee, isn't it? No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't want to bury the lead and spoil it. So, you'll have to. He's not quite that famous, but he's pretty good. And welcome to the channel, Ruben Christopher Haynes. How you doing, man?
Ruben.
Hello.
Hello.
You know
sir.
what? I'm, as it says in the bottom, I'm kind of a musician myself. I had to use that tagline.
Absolutely.
But I do appreciate thank you for your invitation. But I have to say, I miss album cover art. The artistry that it's done.
I know.
That on that canvas meant something that is lost today on kids. And the appreciation of the art.
And like the talent of arranging an album cover and also the track listing and stuff like that in a way that makes sense is kind of dying art, in that it's something I talk about all the time on this channel, of like the album itself being a master of whole work.
Yeah, that's true, because again, the Rush, Who, Pink Floyd, they utilized Queen, especially. They basically the entire album was to experience as an event.
And even heavier bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, like that, the art was an integral part of the album.
So apparently I didn't know this, but the guy who did this cover art was Eraldo Carugati, and he did a lot of stuff for Kiss as well.
Okay.
So all the headshots you see of Kiss where they did their solo stuff, all those artwork images of them is him. So it's the same artist. I've never heard of him. I'm sure he did other stuff.
I've never heard the name, but
He's
he
Italian.
did a hell of a job on this record.
He's Italian.
Again, it's just simple, straightforward, but really solid artwork, and it jumps out at you.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. And as Ruben said, it's the artwork meant something to get you into the album.
Yeah, and we say it on this channel all the time. Like, that's how you'd pick albums half the time, was just the album cover itself of just, that looks cool, let's give that a shot.
That's it. Literally how I used to do it. I go around the record stores in the 70s as a young guy with only a few pounds in my pocket. Ooh, that stands out. I wonder what that's all about. Never heard of these guys.
You'd look through the racks, and I'd pick the ones that had a cool album cover, especially if I'd never heard the band before. And most of the time, like, yeah, you'll get burned every now and again, but most of the time you get a pretty decent product out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm inspired by this kind of album artwork. That's the whole idea. It makes you want to listen more, because again, it is not just a cover. It is part of the album. It's the album cover. It's the liner notes. It's the back. It's the again. If you would read articles or follow the band as a groupie or just as a fan, you would want to know, what are they doing? How are they working? What's inspired them to do these things? And they would talk about it. They would give their creative process and let people know, and it would inspire others. And this is 70s. Well, I don't know. I forgot in the 70s. So
This is 75.
Yeah.
75.
Yeah. 76 was the other one. 2012, 2112.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it really, again, it's really a lost art that needs to be brought back.
And the cool part with vinyl, especially, is like, you didn't have the ability to skip tracks and stuff like that. So you were getting, from the album cover to, like you say, the liner notes and all that, you were getting that piece of art as the band intended to give it to you. So it really gets their message across in a very pure form. And I miss that shit. And which why I started collecting vinyl for the albums I really love. And I don't have a record player around right now. I'll probably get one at some point, because I really do just love that mindset of
it's how the artist meant you to listen to it. That's how they wanted you to listen. Yeah.
Like, this is the way they wanted me to hear what they had to say.
Yeah, because that's the one thing I do. I will buy an album and I would listen to from beginning to the end, and I would want to know. I would want understanding, why is track 1, track 2, track 2, and what are the deep cuts, the things, the hidden tracks that are in albums too that popped up.
Oh yeah, and like you say, 70s, like, this almost sounds like a completely different band, and they were building to something really special. And in 1976, we found out what they were building to. Caress of Steel is, I think, second.
So in between, so the next one was Caress of Steel, which is probably their most metal album title.
Yeah, it's proto power metal. At the same time, in late 75, early 76, you had Queen coming out with Queen 2. It was pretty power metal. You had Rainbow starting out. Deep Purple was going down this route.
And it does have their greatest song title of all time on it, I Think I'm Going Bald.
Yes,
which is
a really interesting song for them. Like, not something you'd expect Rush to do, but it was just a fun song too.
It's probably I hesitate to say this, but it's probably the most overlooked album.
Caress
given
of
what
Steel
came
is
after.
What a lot of people talk about, and it's got some really good stuff on it.
Lakeside Park, again, they played live for many years. Bastille Day. Brilliant, one of their best tracks.
Necromancer, another reference to Tolkien, 2 and 2 albums.
So probably overlooked, but still, again, more like a progressive band. They're progressing. There's some stuff in here.
And it's a much more fantasy-oriented album, and that would really go on to identify this band strongly going forward.
Interestingly enough, it wasn't nearly as successful as the Fly By Night for some reason, commercially. Not that was a huge hit, but it was a number. Fly By Night was a top 10 album in Canada, as you would expect. This one was nowhere near that.
Well, and I think it doesn't have that really poppy radio hit like Fly By Night is to really sell the record. I mean, Bastille Day is pretty good, and it's pretty up there, but it's not like, the radio hit that Fly By Night would be. It's not just like, quick in and out 2.5 minute, like, just radio track that unfortunately most record labels require out of their bands.
But it did take the more extended and conceptual stuff further forward, which was the step they needed for the next.
Well, and it seems like Fly By Night was sort of the the rock side of it, and then this is more of the folky, more fantasy focused side of the record, and then they combined it in 1976 with this absolute magnum opus. Cultural revolution in terms of music that is 2112. Just absolutely mind-blowing fucking record.
Yeah, and it's the one that did commercially break them. I mean, not top 10 in the US, like number 60 or something, but it sold quite a few copies and got them a lot of radio play.
And the funny part is, it's not 2112 that is the absolute masterpiece that got them noticed. It was actually the pop track on this record with Passage to Bangkok.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
And it's still one of my favorite riffs from them. It's just such a cool song.
It is, and we were talking about it again before we came on. That to me is almost a pop song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's metal in sound and progressive with its music, but it's actually got a really catchy hook that you instantly hear and go, "Oh, that's good. What's that?" You know. So
Yeah, the chorus is just instantly catchy. That gets in your head and it'll stay there all day. I mean, I've had it Passage to Bangkok stuck in my head for the last 4 hours.
know, it's
having
incredible.
doing research for the show. Like, I'll get these songs stuck in my head constantly.
Yeah.
What I do appreciate about this album especially is because again I'm classically trained. How it begins. Overture.
Oh yeah, 2112 is a 20-minute rock opera.
Yes, and that's what Night at the Opera from the Queen. It just these who is it? Electric Light Orchestra. The melding of genres. That's what I'm saying. They took things to a certain limit, and these things were meant to be experienced. Going to the stadium at largely and having that massive experience. That's gone now. It's done where you have a DJ doing it, but they're just playing electronics. I want the organic again.
Then you'll love like modern power metal shows because like this.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to go start doing those things again.
Sabaton is absolutely unparalleled when it comes to that with their stage presence.
Who is it? Their drum riser. Nick Weiser goes to all these things, these fests, and I want to go to one. Shit, eventually.
Oh yeah, one of my life goals is to go to Wacken one year and see a lot of these bands that only really tour Europe.
And when do you want to do that?
I mean, I can't now, but
next year.
It depends on the year. I think the year ahead of time they announce the lineup for that given year. But I think 2 years ago it was supposed to be Judas Priest headlining the whole thing on their 50th anniversary tour, which would have been fucking killer for me. I mean, they're my favorite band, full stop. And seeing them with all of these other acts like Venom, a lot of all these other guys that don't tour all that often, and when they do tour, it's only in Europe. A lot of the black metal artists too that really don't go out of Scandinavia very much because they have day jobs. Like, these guys aren't popular enough to be able to do this professionally.
But that's a whole thing. They have their jobs because they have responsibilities and obligations.
Yeah.
Yet they have their passions, and they know that to be a man in the modern world, you have to be responsible.
Yeah, you got to pay the bills, and then you do this for fun.
You do it for fun, and if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's because it's funny. I was talking to somebody at the grocery store. I met a girl there, and I talked to her, and I said, "What do you want to do? What's your goal? Make money." Okay, that's not a goal.
That's a means.
No, a means. What do you really want?
It's a potential outcome, but it's not a goal.
Yeah, what do you really want? She was undecided in college, which is money. I'm like, no, you don't want money. That's what everyone wants. That's what they're fooling you to do. What do you really want? And the thing is that these guys knew what they wanted and they went for it, and I appreciate them.
Yeah, and they made a lot of money doing it, but that wasn't the goal. Like, the goal was to produce 2112, album and a song that will live into the ages of music.
And in fact, they were almost at the point of being forced to give up from commercial pressures, and so they just said, "Fuck it, we're going to make the album we want to make," and they didn't even let their own manager hear it. And it turned out they believed as a band it was the album that finally sounded like Rush to them.
Yeah. And because especially your first few records, you're constantly fighting with the record label to have a pure music piece that is just you, rather than you and the suits at corporate telling you what needs to be on the record for airplay and stuff like that, because they want to make their money back. And then, like you say, on this album, they finally just said, "Fuck it! If we're going to go out, let's go out with a
Rush." Yeah,
but that's the rub. That's the rub.
And created one of the most amazing musical pieces of the 1970s, and an album that will live on in rock and roll history forever.
Infamy. It's an album with a science fiction. It's a science fiction album as well, which is great.
Yeah,
and I loved it because I was into science fiction. I thought, this is great.
And if you told people the concept of the record before they ever heard it, like, it doesn't sound like the kind of thing that would become a legend. It's like this. socialist utopia falling apart into this monstrosity, and then this big sci-fi rock opera takes place. And it was just kind of one of those, like, it doesn't sound like something that would sell well, and yet everybody loves this record.
And it also introduced the Ayn Rand, or Ayn Rand, I never knew how to pronounce her name, philosophies as well, of the libertarian side of Neil Peart's lyrics.
Yeah, and that's a theme that would go on to, be part of Rush's ethos into perpetuity, is that kind of libertarian, sort of.
Creative freedom was what Neil Peart was talking about when he in much of his lyrics.
Oh, absolutely. But, that transfers. You can't have creative freedom without the other freedoms as well.
Yeah,
because they're kind of a byproduct of the freedom of speech and religion and expression and all that kind of thing. Like that's the core of all of it.
But you're going to the fact that you're alluding to the fact that this album was created because they said we're putting all the cards on the table. Damn these record producers. And now it's the exact opposite. Everybody has to follow the formula, and you get produced nothing but bland crap. Bland music, bland movies, bland commercials, bland everything.
Which is when you get guys like Dan Vass bucking that trend and just saying, fuck it, we have YouTube, we don't need a label.
Right.
And just doing it directly. And I'd love to have him on the show to talk about that process, because that's opened the door for bands that you never would have heard about 10 years ago.
If you want Dan Vass, it's easy to get him, theoretically. That could be done. Easy.
Okay. We'll have to set that up, because I would love to talk to him about his band and stuff like that. Because it's one thing, talk about the artists and stuff like that. It's another thing to talk to the artist. I've been trying to get Ambush on the show for a while.
Hey, again, you talk to the right people, and it basically, again, because I have no fear. I'll talk to anybody.
If you want to get Bush on the show, just talk to Ruben. Oh, Ambush. Sorry.
Hello there. Want to come on the show? Want me to come on you?
Oh my god! But anyway, this album is still astounding to this day.
And for an album that was produced in 1976, the audio quality on this record is phenomenal. Well produced. Everything is crystal clear, from the bass work to the drums, and holy shit, some of the drum fills on this record are absolutely insane.
Interesting that the record company, who had previously been willing to shut them down because they had Caress of Steel hadn't done well, actually really got behind this one. And when they heard it, they must have went, okay, let's do it. They must have realized there was something in it.
And that should be a lesson to some of these record execs of, like, if you just shut up, get out of the way, and let the band make the album they want, usually you'll get a hell of a product out of it.
So they did promote it quite well, and it broke them to a certain extent. It broke them. Certainly in America, they started to gain an audience. Maybe not, huge stars yet, but they gained a hardcore audience. And
you can almost imagine the record label, like, the guys from the label, who are like, oh yeah, well, this needs to be this needs to be that, and Rush being like, fuck off, we're going to do it our way. And then when they hear what comes out of the studio, like, this is going to be the biggest album of this year.
And in common with many albums of that era, it's continued to sell well over the decades.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, usually, like, what they're going for is the really short-sighted success of, we're going to sell this many records on launch, and then they don't care. But albums like this, like, they're still selling copies to this day.
I put in the chat, in the private chat, I put the link to the 40th anniversary edition that had all the books and everything there. It's out there. It's for sale still.
I've got the digital version of that. I didn't buy the physical one. I wish I had bought the physical one now.
Well, it's still available, I think.
I'll have to pick that up, because it has, like you say, it has all the books. And I know.
But yeah, I've got the digital version, because it's got a lot of great live extras, live tracks and stuff. The 40th anniversary one.
And that
seems how it's going to be. It's going to be that way, where something comes out and then they produce specialized editions because they're good, but they shouldn't do it to everything.
It's also got some cover versions, which is interesting. So an Alice in Chains cover version, Steve Wilson, Dave Grohl. There's some covers on the cover stuff, which is interesting for a band to put other people's versions of their songs on their own re-releases.
On their own record, yeah. But I mean, that shows you the quality of some of the covers that people have done. Is that the band themselves are like, no, this is great. We want people to hear this.
Yeah. Well, there's complete albums of covers of Rush stuff, but it's a triumph.
No, it
as an
really
album.
is. Like just an absolute, like you say, kind of underdog story, kind of, last gasp, and they come out with a true masterpiece and follow it up with another absolute masterpiece in A Farewell to Kings.
Yeah.
I mean, everything on this record just absolutely slaps.
Yeah. I actually love the cover because it actually doesn't. At first, you look at the title and you think, what's this cover got to do with the title? But it's genius, really. I don't know why, but it just.
If anyone's wondering what my favorite Rush album is,
well, there you go. Yeah. But it's just like some kind of post-apocalyptic.
It looks like a bomb went off.
Yeah,
so they had 2112. Now this is what is this? 2023? Just kidding.
Yeah, right.
2113. This one was different because this one was recorded not in Canada but in Wales.
Really?
Rockfield Studios in Wales, which a lot of bands like Led Zeppelin and others had recorded there too. Rockfield, I think it was something to do with Dave Edmunds. He might have had a hand in setting that studio up, but they wanted to get away somewhere completely different. So they went to Wales, to Rockfield.
And it's certainly much more of a fantasy-themed record for the most part, with A Farewell to Kings, Xanadu, the immortal classic that is Xanadu.
I know. They gave them, and the fact that they'd gone to this kind of secluded studio in the country, in a different country, I think they appreciated they had nothing to do but just concentrate on making the record. It was a very laid-back atmosphere. And because the pressure was off commercially.
The final product where everything on this record is super tight and very, very technical. Even the pop radio hit and Closer to the Heart is an excellent track.
Well, Closer to the Heart became something of a minor hit single in a lot of countries and got them mainstream pop radio play. And this album made it into the top 40 in the US and the UK for the first time. So they were growing commercially. They were growing, and without having to compromise. It's the weird thing you were saying it earlier.
They're more technical and more experimental stuff. Is the most popular.
Yeah, and it's the first time
with Rush. The more they get down that route, the better they get.
Yeah, and they actually started to introduce on this one the bass synthesizer pedal stuff.
Yep.
I think on 2112 they had a little bit of a moog. There wasn't a lot of keyboards, which is incredible when you think guitar, bass, drums doing all that stuff. This one they brought in the pedals.
2112 and realized it's only 3 guys playing on that.
Yeah, and this is where they brought these synthesizer pedals in that they used a lot on stage.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how Geddy Lee did it really. Like all 4 limbs, and he's singing at the same time. Like, what are you playing?
And also paying attention to the crowd and interacting with them. It's just like, how do you do that and still play professionally?
You can tell when he had to take his feet off the synthesizer pedals because he could start bouncing around the stage again. Otherwise, he's glued to the spot.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like your lead singer is supposed to be like you're really animated, running around the stage, interacting with the crowd and stuff like that, and then you have Geddy Lee who has to be in that one exact spot the entire show.
And he had that great double-necked Rickenbacker, which you see in live performances from this period. I love those. I love Rickenbacker bass.
Oh yeah,
I love it.
They make some great stuff. I mean, that's who made all of Lemmy's basses. Yeah,
I love it. It's the Jam. The British band, the Jam. They used the Rickenbacker bass. I love that sound. Paul McCartney from 67 onwards would use a Rickenbacker bass. And he played Rickenbacker basses live with Wings the first few years. It's beautiful sound.
Oh yeah, I mean they're excellent pieces. It's also why they're like $10,000.
I know they look good too as well. They've got that really punchy sound,
And speaking
people don't realize that instruments have character.
Oh yeah.
Mine does.
The cool
part
part
is a big difference between a Gibson and a Fender,
And Farewell to Kings is where you really start to hear Geddy Lee's bass work for the first time, like as an independent part of the song, with the absolute monstrosity that is Cygnus X1, like with that bass intro that's just absolutely awesome with that stop and start riff that start into it, and then you kind of just goes into the whole song and
Yeah.
just this.
It's kind of an impending doom riff,
Yeah,
almost, with a martial element to it. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of got that march, like that, imperial like march kind of.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I couldn't think of the words. Imperial March. Yeah.
That's
But
kind of like that's. I mean, it really fits the song and the subject matter of like, basically falling into a black hole and the impending doom, inevitable impending doom that's coming.
yeah, it's brilliant. Again, science fiction oriented, which appealed to me because I was a big sci-fi fan. So, and as a teenager being into Rush, felt kind of unique because not many of my peers were even aware of them. So I was like, this is special. I've got this. This is mine. What a nerd.
Yeah, but what I would appreciate is the fact that the album again, but the length of the works, Xanadu and all this stuff. I like a meaty piece. I don't want to have a 3-minute done. I want it to last some time. And I appreciate that. And that's what I'm saying. I appreciate that in this kind of music.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you're going for too. Like, there's an argument to be made for that 2-minute, just fast paced.
There is
banger track, but there's also a space for these like 25, 26-minute epics in this genre.
My brother is bass player, and he loves still to this day Jimmy Page. And everything that he did, he imitated. He did things. He used the bow. He used the guitar. I don't know the tube that he uses in the guitar and what it's called.
Yes,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and a bow, and he did all this wild stuff with the bass. But he played, and it was very much of a listen to me. I'm performing for you all, and it's a shared experience, and you feel that in the music.
Yeah,
it's a shared experience,
and
it's psychedelic in a way.
And you can also tell, like, they're just pushing the bounds of what can be done with these instruments and music in general. Of like, these are not hard and fast rules. We can play it any way we like, and let's see how it sounds.
Yeah,
and you're kind of going on this musical journey with them.
Exactly. The same thing. The classical tradition is very strict. I understand that, but again, I wanted to know what the rules were so I could break every fucking one of them. That's me.
Well, that's kind of how prog rock is like we know all of these musical rules. We're all classically trained musicians. Now let's break everything and do what we want.
I think I may have mentioned this on another stream we did, but I remember Bill Bruford talking about that when he was asked to join King Crimson, and he said nobody would tell you what key anything was in. You were just supposed to know, and nothing in any song was ever the same twice. And you were just supposed to know. He said there was no. You didn't say what key is this going to be, and they'd all look at you like you were. Well, he's got to leave the band. He's out.
Yeah, that's a very real thing because again, I've done improv jobs for actually experimental jazz. I've done that, and yeah, you never ask what the key is. Right. Basically, start playing it, and you write instantaneously. The first notes happen, you know you're in a certain key.
Supposed to know where it was going to go.
Because that's why there was a big backlash on the fake book when it was coming out. Because you're trying to teach them how to not be a musician, to have a book. Again, yes, you use the book, but you study and you learn. But that was the whole point. The whole point is you have to be an organic musician. You have to have that aspect of it.
Well, that's one thing I've always respected about the jazz field, even though like it's not my favorite genre of music. They're very free form and they understand music. Like they're not just following the rules because this is what they were taught and this is what they know how to do. Like they are genuinely creating a musical piece and doing it
on the fly.
But Ruben nailed it. You have to know the rules in order to break them. So those guys,
you have to know
knowledge,
what rules you can break and what ones.
Then they know what they can do beyond that.
Yeah, and the perfect analogy is basically that if you complain about a business owner who's getting good tax breaks because he studied the aspect and then is not breaking the rules, but knows the loopholes and figure it out. It's not because it's wrong, because again, that's efficient. That's knowing your craft. Yeah. Using the system correctly, and again, using the notes correctly. Screw what the damn executive wants. I'm going to make an album that for the fans. And then again, who's breaking that formula now? You know, in the movie industry, Tom Cruise is. He says, "I'm doing it for the fans," and that works. He knows the rules. And he was very strict on them. You saw the video. We're trying to save the industry. Keep your mask on. Again, I didn't agree with that, but again, he was following the rules. And
but again,
he
knew what the rule was and why it was there. It's like, we're trying to keep this industry alive, so we can, and this is the only way that's going to happen. So
also, don't give others an
you
excuse to
disagree with.
close us down. Don't give others an excuse to take us down. Yeah.
And that's
that
what
was
you have to
kind
be.
of like the metal community in the 70s and 80s. Like, you know, we were very strict with, you know, what people could say and shit like that at shows, because it's like these Christian groups are looking for any excuse to shut us down if you don't give it to them.
And you gatekeep. You gatekeep properly. Metal gatekeeps properly. Just by the fact that you're kind of like you're imposing. You're
don't come into our area and fuck with us.
You're going to get thrown out.
Yeah, don't come and fuck with us. Yeah.
Yes.
So
and
that's the law. That's the law of the jungle. You know, being society.
That guy who's being a dick in the pit, or, you know, being an asshole to people at the show, he's going to get his ass kicked by the crowd. Security's not even going to have a chance to get involved.
Correct.
Yeah, I never saw anything get out of hand at any of the metal gigs
because we policed each ourselves.
Yeah. And the very few times that I've seen it, it gets handled pretty much instantly.
Yeah.
There was a funny night that I actually did something. It was what was it? I can't remember the band. It was a big Panthera or
Pantera.
Yeah, probably. I can't remember. There were so many of them I went to.
Panther
Sweat. But this is back in 2004 time frame. I'm around there. I'm trying to remember. But I went for my birthday. My friend, my girl, she took me to an opera. Went to a Strauss opera, 4-hour opera, ended at midnight. And she says, she did it all herself. She says, take me to the opera. And then afterwards, she says, she put these on, leather jacket, that we went out to the biker bar, and we went out there, and then we went to a midnight concert and just stayed out all night, partied. That's what I'm saying. It's living life, and damn it, this music means something. I'm happy.
What I get pissed about now is some of the venues are getting, you know, kind of bitchy about what you can and can't wear to the shows. Like, you know, a lot of the longer spiked jackets and stuff like that, they don't like it anymore. You can't wear a bullet belt, which was like part of the unofficial uniform of metal for decades.
I'm sure Lemmy would have obeyed that one. Yeah,
right. I mean, like, let's face it, Motorhead was famous for the leather jacket, denim jeans, and a bullet belt.
Yeah.
It's like,
sure, just to talk about this album again, the jazz has been mentioned a lot here. I think that there's jazz style musicianship on here without anything sounding like jazz, which is I find interesting. It's almost like jazz without any jazz in it.
Well, there's a lot of that in Megadeth's output, because their drummer and bass player were both jazz musicians before they.
But you back it up. Blues is the root of jazz and rock.
Yeah. True, yeah. So it really all comes down to different takes on blues.
And chords. It's chord progressions. Basically, different chords give you different feelings.
Like, it's all based on the blues.
Yeah, and I think for me it's a great album, but Xanadu is definitely one of a track for the ages. You know,
I mean, I have a hard time picking between Xanadu or Cygnus X1 as like the standout track on this record, because they're both, like you say, will go down in the ages as that era's masterpieces.
And this is where I always say it's not about the individual piece; it's about the entire work.
Well, yeah,
I consider this an album. It's Rush and Farewell to Kings. You're supposed to hear the beginning and end, and you can play highlights of it. But you know, because again, for me, it's always been like, again, my analogy when I listen to rock albums, like going, why are you listening to the one track? That's me like listening to the violin player playing the piece. I want to hear the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I question it, because that's what I'm saying. You're not really, you're passively listening to it. If you're active listening to an album like this, you are literally in your room, sitting back, listening to it, having a little drink or a little, you know what, and then just, you know, sitting there and relaxing and listening to it.
But that's the way we did listen to albums in those days.
I mean,
I still do.
I sat in my bedroom with my little record player, my headphones, because I didn't have speakers, I couldn't afford them, and I just sat and listened to the album, and I looked at the sleeve or read the notes, or I didn't play a game while I was doing it, or I didn't
No.
do how I did
Active listening.
nothing but listen to the album
And you're
again
just
and again.
experiencing the piece the way the band wanted you to.
Exactly.
Like you say, sitting there with some high quality headphones or some good speakers, reading the liner notes, looking at the art, and just absorbing the whole experience.
That's what I did.
I'm wearing right now $400 headphones or earphones. I use these. And this is what I listen to music with if I have headphones on. And I have a stereo system right in front of me. It's a wall of speakers right in front of me that I use.
Hey, Vor Axelon, good to see you, man. So,
hey, Vor, yeah, good to see Vor. Yeah, Vor was
thanks for coming
there last night for our hockey.
Yep,
sure.
And I believe the Vets Talking stream as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But no, like Farewell to Kings, I unfortunately have never seen Rush live. I did see Primus perform this entire record, though, and it was a fantastic.
I did see Rush twice, I have to say. I was lucky enough to see them twice.
Oh man!
On Permanent Waves tour in 1980 or whatever that was, and then in the 30th anniversary tour. Both brilliant, life-changing experiences.
Yeah, anyway. I mean, like that's what I've heard from everybody who's seen Rush live. Is it is a special experience. It's not just
there was nothing.
Show.
It wasn't just another gig. It was
like there are shows that you go to that can be completely solid concerts. Like I went to see Airborne last year, really solid show. I had a lot of fun, but it wasn't like a life-changing experience. And when you go to shows like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. Where it's just like completely changes your your opinion of the band.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I just couldn't believe how good it was.
I saw Primus do A Farewell to Kings in Boston in 2021, and it was a magical freaking show. They did. Yeah. I mean, The Sword Open, who were another great band, really solid, like hard rock, kind of like very Black Sabbath-y. Like Black Sabbath with a little bit of mix of Metallica in there. It was a really solid band. And then Primus came out, did like half a set of their own stuff, and then did A Farewell to Kings in its entirety.
Nice.
Wow. Which was brilliant. Just brilliant.
They get it. They get it then. They get it.
Well, not easy to do. Not easy to do if you see them live, see Rush playing live. How do they do that? I think they themselves struggled trying to memorize shit for playing live sometimes. You see them rehearsing, they're going, wait a minute, how does this go again? It's 20 minutes in and I can't remember where it goes. Are we really going to be able to...
what part of the song we're at.
That's right. Are we really going to be able to do this?
And they did a fantastic job of all of it too. And Les was saying he first saw Rush live in I think 1978, and it absolutely changed his life, and it was the reason he went and picked up a bass. And they've toured with Rush, and so they had that mentality of we are going to pay tribute to these guys.
I wish I could go back into my memories and just turn it on again to remember the whole thing as it happened minute by minute, because it's now just a vague memory. It's all in the bank there somewhere, though. I wish I could take something, like stick a needle in there and go, oh, like I'm back at this gig again and reliving it as it happened, because that first time I saw them particularly, it was just insane. The crowd were insane.
I use a personal technique to do those types of things. I basically will go back and remember the events that happened at the same time. What was I doing the same day? How was it going? I try and coax it out of me from a different angle. What was I eating? What was I doing? What do I enjoy? Try to get them, unlock the memory, and it can't happen.
Yeah, it's very deep. I'd love to relive certain gigs like that as if I was at them again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this one very vividly because it was actually right when I was starting my channel out, and a guy I had actually done an interview with on his podcast, good friend of mine from the Masswell Marines. The guy's channel name is Oscar Mike Radio. He's a really good veteran podcaster. Asked me if I wanted to go see Primus. I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't mind Primus's individual stuff. Like they're not like my favorite band, but I like a lot of their stuff. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd go see them live. And then I found out they were going to be doing A Farewell to Kings. I was just like, I am so glad I said yes to this show.
Nice.
This is my favorite Rush album. And
so this is your favorite one,
yeah. Seeing it performed live in its entirety by a different band, and doing it in a very, very faithful way to the original artist. Like, I didn't know Les Claypool could sing like Geddy Lee. Apparently he can.
Now, there's a point. So a lot of people that, like, particularly my beloved wife, can't stand Geddy Lee's vocals. It puts her
Really?
off Rush completely. She
Wow.
likes the instrumental stuff better, but she can't stand his vocals. So he is a bit of a polarizing vocalist, I have to
Well,
say.
that's when you throw on stuff like YYZ.
And yet, when you hear him sing the covers that they did on that cover version album for the 30th anniversary, he actually sings those songs in a very un-Geddy Lee-like way. He's down a couple of registers and he sings a lot of them more straightforwardly. So he does like Crossroads or songs like that, and he sings it a much more straightforward rock vocalist. As soon as he's back to the Rush stuff, it's back up.
Well,
which
yeah,
is
I mean,
weird.
it would be like hearing someone sing Judas Priest in a mid register. It's like, what?
And I can't think. Yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't want to be I don't know if anybody wanted to be the vocalist to start with. So he probably landed on him. But I mean, he must have just made a conscious decision to adopt that particular style. Time to get a new wife. Well, I'd have to ask permission from the existing one. That wouldn't be given. So, he must have decided that this was the most effective range for him to sing in, because he is a very high vocalist.
Yeah, well, I mean, every vocalist has that pocket where they have the most power and control over their voice. And, in the case of like Geddy Lee or Rob Halford, it's way up in the stratosphere. Whereas that's one of the things I love about Joaquin from Sabaton is he is a natural baritone and he doesn't go high. He just sings really powerfully and really emotionally well controlled in that range, and he sticks with it.
Oh yeah, he's got a beautiful voice, but I think it must be difficult to sustain that over 40 years though, to sing in that register. I know that Brian Johnson of AC/DC sang a lot higher when he joined AC/DC than he did in his previous band, Geordie. He put it way up, and he said it is pretty uncomfortable after a while. When you get older, the voice can't do it.
Comfortable to have that vocal style up in that register. I mean, like guys like Rob Halford do it, and
he's got 5-octave range though, so he can go.
And he's hardly alone in that. Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, Jeff Tate from Queensryche. And the cool part with Tate is, especially, he's a natural baritone and trained his voice to get up into that register, which had to be hard to do and take a lot of work.
Yeah, but it does great on some people. I know that. I've met others who even like rock music or like progressive rock or heavy rock, and they're like, "Yeah, I like Rush, but the singing's a little bit."
Yeah, I mean, his voice isn't for everybody. Like, it is a unique talent, but it's also part of what makes Rush.
And of course, it is. And of course, there's no backing vocals, not particularly. So that's a very different thing as well. And most bands have some level of backing vocals going on.
And any kind of backing track, I think, is usually Geddy Lee dubbed in again. So he's, kind of duetting with himself a little bit. So that, there's no other vocalist in the band, I don't think. I think Alex Lifeson does backing vocals on some of their early stuff. I think there's the
tiniest little bit of it, but I mean, live, I don't think Lifeson goes anywhere near a microphone that I'm aware of. And maybe Neil Peart did a little bit. I can't remember. But
I know Lifeson had a microphone on stage at certain points because I've seen pictures of it, but I don't know.
Just to stand behind.
I think it was really just to amplify the acoustic guitar sections of his stuff. And
possibly.
A word here
it's more of a prop than anything else, I think. But just to do the acoustic closer to the heart stuff or whatever. But I don't think he sings at all that I'm aware of. But I could be wrong. I don't know
I mean, there may be a backing word here or there somewhere, but I don't know of any offhand. But it's all just Geddy doing the singing, and it becomes a major part of that band's sound.
I think once you get used to it, it works. I mean,
when you treat it as another part of
another instrument,
as another part of the piece, which it is, it makes a lot more sense than just being the vocalist behind over the music.
Yeah, and I think another aspect about this Rush in this period, where it's like some of our other favorite bands, they were critically reviled.
Oh yeah,
Queen as well at this period. The rock critics hated them. They hated Rush. I mean, the quote from the Village Voice guy, who obviously would have hated anything that was rock because they were into weird shit. Pan Rush is the most obnoxious band currently making a killing on the zonked teen circuit. They had no critical respect from the majority of the mainstream, which made me love them even more, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're always the kind of people like, oh, the critics hate it. This might
must
be good.
fucking awesome.
Like,
So because they
to this
hated
day, if
all
I see the
metal,
show media hating on something, I'm much more likely to go seek
they
it out.
hated everything metal anyway. I mean, the only progressive
They
stuff
still do.
that the rock critics liked that I recall in the mid 70s was things like King Crimson. They didn't like the more mainstream progressive stuff. They liked weird shit that was because they wanted to appear clever, you know.
Yeah, they wanted to be the hip crowd. They were the hipster douchebags before hipster douchebags were
They wanted
cool.
to be hipsters, yeah. So they would like all the hipster shit that nobody gave a shit about. And the Rush were like Queen. They were critically savaged by virtually everybody. Not everyone. There were people that liked music, but who would have given them good reviews. But 90% of the critics would have reviled them.
Yeah,
So
and
it
yet
didn't
the
hurt
fans
them.
absolutely adored them.
And that's why they became a cult, almost a cult band. Although they went progressively commercially beyond that being a cult, but they were a fanatical group of supporters who said, "This is our band, and we don't give a fuck what you say."
Not to be confused with The Cult, which is another band we'll probably get to at some point. I like them quite a bit.
Yeah, they went from like, you know, an ordinary band. This is the experimental era, and it leads to their grand, you know, I don't know, grand opus, not grand opus, I should say, where they pushed the boundaries immediately. It's coming up, but then they went commercial at the very end. But that's in my opinion. But yeah, but this is I can't wait to talk more about this. This is getting exciting.
Well, yeah, I
this
mean,
here.
And the cool part too is you had magnum opus, like one of these big, you know, operatic masterpieces that starts on this album for the first 9 minutes, and then the next 18 are on its successor, Hemispheres.
Yes, this is the one. This is the album.
The first half of this record is literally just Cygnus X1 Part 2, and I absolutely adore it. Like, it takes a band like Rush to be able to pull off a 25-minute musical masterpiece that you can be 20 minutes into it and not care.
Would you say that Farewell to Kings in this are almost part 1 and part 2 of a double album?
Sonically, they're very similar.
Yeah.
Despite
this whole like arc, it's a whole arc that it started, to my opinion, with 2112. It's an arc. It's building up, experimenting, changing, pushing the boundaries. Then they went not too far, but they pulled it back a bit, went commercial in a way. But still, again, it is what it is. It can be appreciated for what it is.
Yeah, and this is the album closer to the heart had been a bit of a minor hit single in Britain, but The Trees actually was a top 20 hit single in the UK.
Just goes to show you, just because something's popular on the radio doesn't mean it has to be bad.
That's right. And people were like, what is this? Who is this weird band? Where is this automobile? No, sorry, slipped into a completely different band there entirely. They were actually getting mainstream radio play because of these songs, Close to the Heart and then The Trees. And it's great. I mean, I loved it. It was like along like you'd hear this, and then the next song would be ABBA. You know, it would be like the Rush are on the.
But it's a good advertisement to get people into the band. Like, you come for The Trees, and you get Cygnus X1 and stuff like that. That you're like, wow, okay, these guys are really out there.
Yeah. Oh. And I still can't pronounce La Villa Strang. I can never pronounce it.
La Villa Strangiato or whatever the hell
I used to call it Strangledato, but you know, Strangledato. No, it's Strangiato.
And Hail Parrot, that's good to see you, man. Always good to see you stop by these shows.
Lots of little bits together.
And exercise and self-indulgence is
exercise and self-indulgence.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, and that's when you do need the record label to kind of rein you in a bit. Like, okay, you've gone a little far, need to come back now.
And they did. Yeah, but that's the thing.
Earth is this way.
And let's face it, if they were going to release a single, they only had 2 choices. Because there's
either that or Circumstances.
I wonder which one it's going to be. Let's take the.
But then
18
again,
minutes
that's where the dichotomy. The artist wants their vision to be shown, but then the person who's supporting, getting distributing it, only wants the snippets for radio play. That's the dichotomy. What do you do?
And you also need both sides of that to produce a competent record, because otherwise the artist just goes off into freaking space and does some really out there stuff that may be good, may be bad. You never know. But but if the record label's fully in charge, then you just get this cookie cutter, completely forgettable record that you listen to it once and then you're done.
Yeah, there are a lot of famous composers, classical composers, like Tchaikovsky, hated the Nutcracker Suite, hated it, but it was popular. Rachmaninoff, there was a famous piano piece that he plays, and I know that Charlie Pugh plays sometimes, very short one, very, 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 and he would play. And he would perform that after concerts, but he hated it because everyone just wanted to hear that over again. They want to hear what they want to hear. So very commercialized music floats to the top. It's popular because it's cookie cutter per se. And again, everyone writes that way sometimes, and it sticks. But we hate it. Artists hate it because it's just too simplified, or it's too normie in a way. But yeah, if you have to do it, you have to do it. But this album is the epitome of pushing boundaries. They pushed boundaries.
A great cover again. Great cover.
Yeah.
Very interesting cover. Certainly.
Yeah.
And lyrically,
like Black Sabbath was Paranoid. They just put that song on the record because they needed another 2.5 minutes worth of playtime filler to make a full record. And they had and that was kind of one of the ones they weren't really proud of, but they just kind of came up with it to fill time. And it ended up becoming one of their best sellers.
Well, and in fact, the only one normies would know. But the Cheap Trick, the same. They only put "I Want You to Want Me" in the Budokan set list because they had a gap of 2.5 minutes, and they said, "Well, what are we going to play?" That was never even meant to be on the set list, and that became the song that broke them internationally. It was like a throwaway. Oh, if we've got to fill 2 minutes here, what are we going to play?
Yeah.
But this the lyrics on the Trees are some of my favorite lyrics of all time. I mean, they're not just lyrics; it's beyond that. There's something. They're not poetry. They're not lyrics. It's something else. They're very artistic. But the Trees is the absolute. It's the libertarian again in Neil Peart, warning against collectivism.
Because in a very almost like a fable, where it has a point to it, but they don't beat you over the head with it. You just kind of get there as you get there.
Yeah. But he's saying all these people are fighting each other for supremacy, and then the real big boys come in at the end and just level them all.
Right.
It's just such a different song.
But that's the reality of life. How do you beat somebody? Have them fight somebody else first, and then you come in when they won, but they're so weak you can control them. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rocket again. You got to respect the musician, the artist, because they know the pulse of society, and they sing about what society is going through.
And to a much larger extent than almost any other media, they kind of subconsciously get these attitudes into the mainstream and into the public in a very consumable way, to the point where they're being influenced by it and not even really realize it.
There's a lot of rock musicians, as we all know, that think of themselves as being smart, and they think they're clever. They think they're aware of what's going on in the world. We see it all the time now, and they think they're some kind of avatars of knowledge. Then there are guys who actually do know what's going on, like Neil Peart, and are actually really smart guys in reality, not just in their heads.
I'll amend you one thing. Some people they just are not aware. They don't know anything. They think they know because they've never been told they don't know. That's the whole thing. It's the generation that has been not told no, not been questioned. They just conform and are happy, but if they're challenged, then they collapse. Yeah, and Neil Peart and Rush and bands of this nature who pushed the boundaries, when they were challenged, they pushed back and they excelled. They
Yeah. And
And there's
created.
also artists who get a big head about it and think because they're really good musicians that people give a shit what they think on other things. Neil Young.
Yeah.
That,
Dick. Sorry.
yeah.
That's why I
used to adore that guy, and now I can't stand the thought of him. The Hollywood dick now, that's all he is.
I know.
Yeah,
But that's
it's
why
really just like, yeah, whatever, man. Or Dee Snider
Just
from
Hollywood
Twisted
sellout.
Sister, where it's just complete
Jesus.
sellout.
Just sellouts. Yeah, Neil, Neil went Hollywood when he married Daryl Hannah, and now he's in the bubble. And he's
Yeah.
everything he always claimed to hate. He is it now.
And at least Bono was always a far left douchebag and
Was
was
always a
openly
douchebag,
honest
yeah.
about it.
Did I tell you the story about you two?
No, I don't think
No,
so.
so I don't know if have you ever seen a British, well, it's an Irish show really, but British production called Father Ted.
Yes, absolutely. I
Right.
love
So
that
the
show.
guys that wrote Father Ted, Graham Linehan, and I can't remember the other guy's name, before Father Ted, they used to have a comedy act. And they did live gigs and did a lot of live shows in Ireland. And they used to do a U2 spoof. And they called it the Joshua Trio. And
Okay.
one of them would come on stage as Bono on the back of a real donkey with a crown of thorns on his head and a robe. And they said that was their introduction to the act, the Joshua Trio. And so that was the Father Ted guys.
Well, let's face it, Bono's always had a little bit of a messiah complex.
That's
and
not
that was
wrong.
them. They were absolutely mocking him mercilessly, acting like he was Jesus,
And
He's
yet,
got the crown of thorns.
And yet somebody like Bono will take that as an insult and stuff like that. Whereas somebody like Geddy Lee would just laugh and go along with the joke. He'd probably even do it himself.
Yeah. But anyway, that's a diversion. But that's
No, but
kind
it's
of-
not a
kind
it's
of
not
what I
really a
think of
diversion,
U2.
Brian. What it is. It tells you that self-awareness is important,
Yeah.
and if mocking people for what they believe their beliefs are, who they are, it's part of life. It's a living theme.
And I'm glad that you two were mentioned, because this is the point I was trying to make inexpertly, was that Bono thinks he's smart.
Yeah.
Neil Peart was smart, and there's a
That's
world of
it.
difference.
There you go. That makes sense.
Yeah. Bono imagines that he's this savant with his finger on the pulse of the world and knows everything about everything. He's just an empty, vacuous mouthpiece. Neil Peart actually,
Yeah, because again, you can say that
a
all this
clever guy.
Project Red thing, everything red for AIDS research. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine and dandy. But then they corporatize it, and then it's all about drugs and whatever. You're servicing the drug industry, which again it helps. It does
Big
help.
pharma.
I'll say, yeah. But again, how about clean living?
Big Pharma has a lot of power.
Well, I mean,
I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but they have.
I know. I'm just saying.
And they have the power to buy bands and artists and musicians, and they do.
Or as I refer,
I know,
to them,
but
they
that's
really
why
are
I appreciate
the
this band, because they at this time they were not doing that.
I
the
don't recall
medical
them.
industrial complex.
Yeah, and I don't think a guy like Neil Peart would ever have stood for that corporatization of his art.
Absolutely not. He would have told them to kick rocks as soon as they tried, because
Yeah.
he was much more of the Socratic type of intelligence. Of the only thing I know is that I know nothing.
Isn't that the guy that was in Bill and Ted, Socrates?
Yeah, Socrates. Yeah.
But that's a truth. That's a truest statement. I love that. That's that quote from Socrates. It says, "I live by that every day. I want to know more because I don't know
Socrates
enough."
is a tough one in terms of what he actually said, because it's hard to tell, because he never himself wrote anything down. It's
Right.
all Plato talking about what Socrates said.
Correct.
So it's hard to say how much of that is actually him and how much of that is Plato using him as a sock puppet, because Socrates' name had gravitas and weight, whereas his didn't. So it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm not saying this. My mentor Socrates said this.
I'm sorry, but my views on philosophy and philosophers are entirely colored by the Monty Python philosopher song.
As they should be. I mean,
As
that's
they
one
should
of
be.
the most
Hey,
I
man,
agree.
you can't
As
was
they
real
should.
peasant who's very rarely able. I digger was a boozy beggar who could drink you under the table. Dividium cannot consume, sharpen her and shavel. And Liechtenstein was a beery swine, blah, 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 blah.
Well, and I think half of those philosophers would be absolutely appalled if they figured out that they were still being studied this far into the future. They're like, I was drunk when I wrote that. How did anyone take that
How the
seriously?
fuck did anyone get a hold of that? But yeah, I love that song. Socrates himself was permanently pissed. That's
Pretty much.
John Stuart Mill, of his own free will, of half a bit. Shandy was particularly ill.
And then,
Rainy Descartes, drunken fart. Sorry.
Talking about like, the more commercial side of the band, you go into Permanent Waves is supposed to be there, but I guess I fucked up on that one. But
Permanent Waves, we've got to do Permanent Waves.
Solid album, but a little more commercial. Starting off with The Spirit of Radio and Free Will. Well, while both solid tracks and rightly justified as some of their classics. I mean, they are a little more on the commercial and poppy side.
That's the tour I first saw them on, was Permanent Waves, and it was a great experience. And it actually was kind of nice that they had some songs. Not the whole gig wasn't the longer pieces. There were quite a lot of songs from that album on there. And it's a kick-ass album, Permanent Waves. I mean, and Spirit Radio, number 3 hit single in the British singles charts, which was unheard of in the era of, it was the era of punk. It was the era of still bands, groups like ABBA. It was the disco era. And there's Rush at number 3 in the singles charts. The Spirit of Radio.
And there's a reason why
on top of the
fun
pops.
Song.
Yeah, and getting played on, they were on top of the pops. They're getting played on pop radio everywhere.
Which is really funny when you think about the lyrics of the song and the meaning behind it of being pretty anti-corporate.
The words on the Prophet are written on the subway walls, concert halls, and it's about record company corporate marketing and corporatization.
Well, I mean, all this machinery making music and stuff like that. Like, talking about the impersonal nature of music, and they were saying this in 1980.
Yeah, and it's pretty fun to hear that on the radio and amongst all the Pop Tarts and all the other pop stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, massive hit, and I do love the album. It's more of a, I mean, let's fair. It's to be true. Natural Science is like 9.5 minutes long, but the rest of the tracks are pretty much songs in their own right.
Jacob's Ladder is another one that's on the longer end, and again has that kind of military march kind of feel to it.
It does, yeah, that doomy military march feel. Free Will as well is another key track because of the
very
lyrics.
Deep kind of again, very simple lyrics that are extremely deep in their meaning.
I will choose free will.
If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Like that was
hence my little tag on.
Yeah,
I'm choosing.
But that itself is very telling. People need to hear that message. Yeah. Not choosing is choosing.
That's right. Saying I don't want to take a part.
Choosing not to say anything is making a choice.
That's
to say
right.
Nothing.
You're making a choice. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but yeah,
we teach it in leadership in the Marine Corps of doing nothing is a decision, and it's usually the wrong one.
Yes.
Yeah. And Soul Assassin, that is a brilliant line. I'll have to freaking use that. I don't know if it's Socrates who said that, but that's freaking great.
Yeah, it is. I'm telling you, his name's Socrates, not Socrates. You need to get that right. Come on. But yeah, great. Permanent Waves. I know we'll move on to Moving Pictures, but Permanent Waves has got a special place in my heart purely because of the fact it's the tour I saw them on and for the first time.
And while being a little more commercial and a little less, experimental, they still had some pretty good musical experimentation on that album with, especially Spirit of Radio. They go into a little bit of reggae with it and, mixed musical styles quite a bit.
Yeah. And it was actually that one was recorded. They went back and recorded in Canada again. They were in Quebec and recording that one. So it's not that really matters. I guess it gives it a slightly different sound. Each studio has its own sound. I wouldn't have really noticed that at the time, but I think it's a solid album, Permanent Waves. I mean, the free will alone, the lyrics of Spirit of Radio and Free Will are immense.
Yeah, and statements. Just for those two songs, you should own the record.
Yes.
And then we move on to this absolute masterpiece, proving that, just because it's popular doesn't always mean it's not good. And we have Moving Pictures with
Well,
Their
the
most
opening,
overplayed song.
The opening, everyone knows it. Everyone knows the first
Yeah.
song.
The most
Everybody.
overplayed
If you don't know
rock
it, you
song
don't
of
know
all
this.
time.
If you don't know the song, then then you turn in your like
Today's
musical.
Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, but if you don't know Tom Sawyer by heart at this point, you've obviously never heard of
Yeah.
Rush.
And then obviously the opening riff of Limelight, which people can sing a cappella. Dun, 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 dun. And then Canadian radio, you'll hear that 10 times a day.
And yet
Limelight.
yet Limelight is my absolute favorite Rush tune of all time. I
It's a-
absolutely adore that song.
It's a beautiful ballad, really. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful ballad and like a pop rock ballad. There's nothing
And
metal
also
about it.
kind of a window into the musician's mindset of being a popular artist and stuff like that, and basically living in the public eye. And how their kind of mentality on it.
And yeah, Neil Peart saying it. Not every stranger I meet is a friend. I don't know. Like
yeah, I
'cause
can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend.
Yeah, he was like, leave me alone. Just because I'm in the band doesn't mean I'm your long lost buddy. And I get that. He valued his privacy.
And Vora, I don't mean Rush. Like we said at the beginning of the show, Rush is in a league of their own when it comes to that. Like there is no other band like them out there.
Yeah, funnily enough, I don't know if Christian is still in listening, but he'll know who I'm talking about. But the Pi Dubois is a Canadian artist who co-wrote some of the lyrics with Peart on Tom Sawyer. But he's a guy not many people outside of Canada will know, but he was involved with a band called Max Webster, who were Kim Mitchell is the guitar player, who I've seen live a couple of times. He had it with Go for Soda, was a big hit. A Kimbo logo, even that it was hit in America. So Pi Dubois is kind of one of these behind the scenes guys in Canadian music. He's done a lot of stuff, a lot of production. For some reason, he must have been a friend of Peart's, but they co-wrote the lyrics and that. I think it's the only time they did anything with Rush, but it's kind of a neat little association, because it's very Canadian of them to work with Pi Dubois. It's a small scene,
They needed French representation in their
music. They did, yeah. But he was in a band called Max Webster, who I really like. So Christian will know who Max Webster were, and who Kim Mitchell is. He's a great Canadian guitar player, and Pi Dubois was also in Max Webster. So.
And then again, going to kind of the authoritarian futurism with Red Barchetta, which as a car guy, I absolutely adore. Because it just really captures like the fun of just driving it.
That's another one of Neil Peart's obsessions, isn't it? Cars and motorbikes. Yeah.
And then, of course, for the musical experimentation, you have YYZ, which are actually the call letters for the Toronto airport. That's
right, YYZ. Yeah, I've been in and out of YYZ many times.
And they actually incorporate that Morse code of YYZ into the song. And which is really cool to me. And it's just an awesome little jam session between these guys and just absolutely kick-ass music.
Again, there's a kind of a little bit of a Marshall feel.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It's just,
and I love that
little drumming
synthesizer solo in the middle of it. They really slow the beat down. And it's just really beautiful part of the piece.
They were making quite extensive use of synthesizers by this time. And
oh, yeah. I mean, they, like a lot of prog bands, they were...
Oh, you're roboting a bit, mate.
Yeah,
the synthesizer thing did eventually cause a bit of a schism in the band between Lee and Lifeson. Not that there would ever be a total break between them as they're so close, but Lee wanted to do albums just with synthesizers, no guitar, but of course Lifeson was, well, I think I still want a bit of guitar playing or something. Yeah.
It's like I don't mean to like this, but it's kind of my thing.
Kind of a guitarist, yeah. So he wanted to go more and more into the synthesizer world.
So you want to do a whole synth album? What am I supposed to do? Stand there and wave?
Hence, you would get songs that were almost completely synthesizer at certain points. And Lifeson was like, I still want a bit of rock guitar on here. Come on.
Yeah. And apparently, Christian's not only here, he has Max Webster album.
That's right. Max Webster, quite a well-known Canadian band, particularly because of Kim Mitchell, who who was not afraid to wear yellow jumpsuits and have crazy hair. But great
Well, I mean,
guitar player. But if you ever get the chance to hear him play guitar, he's a kick-ass guitarist, kind of reminiscent of Frank Zappa in much
Okay.
of his work. You know, that kind of crazy, all over the place, time signature changes and whatever. Just great solos that go where you don't expect them to. Anyway.
And again, you have like a couple of much more commercial songs at the beginning with Limelight and Tom Sawyer, and then you get down into the Camera Eye, which is a 10-minute very synth heavy prog rock piece, which I adore, and then Witch Trial and the rest of the album are all solid as well. So like just because like they had a little bit more commercial sound on some of their tracks didn't mean they didn't still have it musically.
No, I think what you're saying is like all progressive bands should want to do is they are evolving and trying different things and trying to change their sound and doing what they think is right, not what they think the audience might expect.
And it's a really cool process to have all of those different musical experimentations and stuff like that on the same record, and yet still have it all sound like not only Rush, but all sound like it belongs on the album.
Yeah, I mean, they really were there. I know a lot of people like, and I like the later material too, but they really were at a peak here. I mean, this was creative peak.
Yeah, pretty much from 2112 to this point, these guys were just on another level creatively. They were just on a mission to find out everything you could do with rock music, and they pretty much hit every wicket going through.
Sorry, I just have to do this. I don't know why I gotta share. This is the band Max Webster, and this is Kim Mitchell. This is how he dressed on stage. He actually does for years. He's done a radio show in Toronto, a rock radio show. Yeah, that's Max Webster, a great Canadian band. That's a good album. That Universal Juveniles, great album.
There are many brilliant things that happened in the 70s and 80s. A total fashion disaster, however.
That's right. Yeah.
When it came to fashion and like decorating and stuff like that, mistakes were made.
Yeah, mistakes were made, but luckily he wasn't broken forever. He was repairable. We could repair him.
Yeah, we have the technology.
Yeah. So it's just one of these little side bands that I really love, Max Webster, that nobody knows about outside of Canada. So.
Yeah.
Well, Patio Lanterns and Go for Soda were hits in America as well. Hit singles in the 80s, but you'd have to seek them out.
Yeah, it's a promise of like the revolution, not revolution, the 60s, the evolution of the sexual evolution, everything that happened there. Letting your freak flag fly. That guy, he didn't give a fuck. He just did what he wanted to do. And that's the whole idea now. We have to basically embrace be a freak, be a misfit. I am.
But if everyone's a misfit, nobody's a misfit.
It's true.
That's the problem now is a lot of them
maybe it turns into vanilla.
Of them proclaim their individuality by doing exactly the same as everybody else.
Yeah. They're doing the same. They're not being different.
Individuality, then, is it? If you're espousing exactly the same views as everyone else in the mainstream, then you're not an individual. Neither are you rebellious or a freak.
Right? Yeah, and that's the whole idea. That is where I think that this whole shit can backfire, because if you have the littlest kids start to rebel against parents who are completely woke, they're going to have the adults are going to have a complete connection. If my kid won't listen to me because all he wants to do is just wear MAGA hats all day, it could happen.
Well, we've got to hope that that's where the rebellion comes. Yeah.
That's what we're kind of seeing, is that what the generations coming up now is based as hell.
Well, everyone rebels against the previous generation, and if your parents are woke hipster douchebags, then you're going to rebel against that.
Well, and Vor's saying it, like, I was in a similar position where, like, Korn and all the new metal stuff was popular when I was a kid, so I intentionally, like, avoided most of that and went back to the 80s with bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and stuff like that, and intentional. Like, I think I said that on Monday on the Grunge stream, like, I guess.
But think about it. Here's why.
I went back to the 80s.
But here's where it comes down to the bottom line, that this shit does matter. like growing up at the same time period, like 70s, 78, around there, Superman came out. I went to the movies and I was inspired by Superman. If I wanted to listen to music, I had Rush and all of their experimental shit too. Because again, the same tagline, the whole idea of being a freak, your freak flag fly, do whatever you want to do in life. Superman, the movie system, Richard Donner did it that way. Musicians like Rush did it that way. And then that affected society to stand up and say, no, we're not going to go off and fight your dumb wars. It's standing up to the man. It's a whole thing. And now it's going to happen again. And they're going to freak the fuck out because again, that's the whole thing. Like even John Lennon, when he said, you think you're going to start a revolution, look at Mao, what he's doing and killing people. You got to watch out what you're doing. And he changed the world.
If
and
it goes down to one pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anyone anyhow. Great line, brilliant line.
But that's the whole idea. And people think that, oh yeah, he was for anti-war. No, he was basically for free thought, thinking for yourself, and noticed that that's basically it's this classic bargain, devil's bargain in a way. Do you classically going back to the Bible? Do you want Jesus or Barabbas? Do you want the path of violence or the path of peace? What do you want? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. What do you want? Do you want to fight or do you want to be peaceful? And now we're the same thing. Do you want to be Antifa or do you want to be Make America Great Again? And there is a difference. There is a difference. Do you want to fight for this and cause damage and havoc and chaos, or do you want harmony? I choose the path of harmony and love.
I mean,
we know you choose the love, Ruben. I mean, that's
he doesn't choose the love. The love chooses him.
That's true. All for the ladies. That's all it is. No, but it's true. It boils down to one thing. I love ladies, of course, because they're precious, they're valuable. And I have a saying is, again, I say this. Women are not small because they are demure or weak. They are the filtered essence of humanity. They need to be curated and prosper. It is the seed which humanity grows. And that's what I put my love into that.
But saying valuable is another way of saying expensive.
That's true.
Just kidding.
That is true as well. But again, you teach the woman. Yes, you do. As I said, you teach the woman that you're the man, you're the orchestra. She's wild chaos. You direct it and move it.
We're the orchestra. She can fiddle while Rome burns. Yeah.
That's right. Just saying.
Yeah,
but I'm saying, rock guys got pussy. Okay, they got more pussy than anybody else.
Well, they were the Lemmy. That's why you did the whole thing in the first place, because playing guitar got you laid.
Most guys did. They got into bands because it was a way of picking up girls.
Exactly. And I have my horn, and I can blow that horn really well. I'm just saying. It works.
I mean, that's why men do most things, is because it attracts women.
See, brass players. Think about it. Brass players. When you think about it, if you've played in bands before, brass players are the best kissers because we know how to use the tongue and the lips.
The embouchure, yes.
Yes. I'm just saying. Never.
And they get horny. They do get horny.
Guitars are like women. They love being held, and if you finger them right, they make really nice noises.
Great point, and I agree. With this show. I concur, my friend. I concur.
But no, I mean, it's impossible to say enough good things about a band like this. So, like musically and, from a message and culture standpoint, super influential and super creative in the way they approach certain things. And yet at the same time, we're mainstream enough to be successful. And there's not many bands that can claim both of those. Like there's a ton of prog bands out there that are really cool and really musically entertaining, but no one's ever heard of them, like King Crimson or something like that, where they got no mainstream attention.
There's no band like Rush. There's not another band in the world like them. It's very hard to be unique.
The closest I could say to Rush in terms of musical progression and also pop success would be Queen.
I think Queen and certainly they had their progressive elements too, as we discussed on another show ages ago. I recall first 2 or 3 Queen albums and a lot of progressive sounds on them. I think I think you're right. I would agree with you about that. They weren't as progressive as Rush, but they had those elements, but still appealed to the masses.
What about Pink Floyd then, in that same genre? Or
Floyd
no?
would be another
Pink
one I would
Floyd,
put up
yeah.
in there.
Pink Floyd, and then the Who to a certain extent, but they were still more mainstream.
More, Genesis probably, but then
Genesis, yes, definitely.
In order to become truly commercially successful, Genesis had to ditch the progressive sound completely.
Yeah,
They went
yeah.
completely
or bring up Led
commercial.
Zeppelin, and that's certainly true. Especially
Yeah, early
later
Zeppelin.
on toward Physical Graffiti.
Early Zeppelin, yeah.
The difficulty is walking that
Dazed and
line, which says
confused.
we are not going to become truly a commercial band. We're going to do what we do, and we will also have some commercial success with it. Genesis ditched the commercial. They ditched everything to become a 3-minute pop band. Not bad pop music, but just they were no longer the Genesis of Wind and Wuthering.
Or
doing
David
Invisible
Bowie,
Touch.
where he ditched a lot of the more progressive elements of his music in order for the more commercial side.
And I would say that whilst Pink Floyd had massive commercial success, there are elements of their albums that would not appeal to the masses. I mean, not many people cite Animals as a. Not many normies who might have heard of Pink Floyd and know what certain tracks, they'll never have heard of Animals, or they wouldn't listen to Animals.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's
Or they wouldn't know Metal,
And
or
that's the
Echoes.
difference between a normie and a fan. Like the fans will, we'll start. Like I started, like we talked about when we talked about The Wall. Like I started with The Wall, and freaking the hell. Why am I blanking on the other album? Dark Side of the Moon.
I was the asshole basically that would go into a bar and it was there all night long, and then when the music went to turn to shit, no one was paying attention. They had the touch tunes thing.
Yep.
So I would play like I played Echoes, and people would go, "What the fuck's this?
What the fuck's that? Yeah. What the fuck's this?"
Because it just goes on for like 30 minutes. What's going on? But again, that's what appeals to me. That the length, the work, the craftsmanship, the taking the time to tell the story. All of these albums from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, 70s especially, and early 80s, told stories. Albums meant something, and it's just if you no, I'm not saying if you have a chance. I'm saying go right now. You have a Spotify, you have a Pandora, you have Apple Music, you have YouTube. Listen to this album, not individual songs, the albums. You will discover new things that you've never known about yourself. You're gonna find something out.
Well, I think Vor Axelon says it well. It says classic rock radio has taught me that the only classic rock you will hear is the tip of the iceberg. That is very true.
Absolutely.
It's
and
the same for every genre.
To get you into it.
Yeah, you'll only hear those same 30 songs again and again that you hear all the time. Jump by Van Halen
but what's really
whatever. Black and Black. You'll hear those a million times. Yep. You won't hear necessarily Xanadu.
No. Especially
maybe
because,
on some channels.
It's rock radio. They want to get as many songs in that time slot as possible, so they're not going to play an 11-minute, rock opera. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody is about the only exception they make, because that song blew up out of nowhere.
Yeah, they can feel they can get away with that one, but then they'll play that instead of playing two others, so they'll still get the same.
Also, the most important thing we'll say on this show: Lord Thoth has a new puppy, and that's freaking awesome. I instantly love him. Hello, Lancelot.
Hey, Lancelot.
And praise be Lord Thoth.
I better not tell the missus that, because she wants one of those. So. They're beautiful. That'd be beautiful, Lord Thoth. Yeah.
No, and it really is like rock radio existed to sell the record. Basically, like you pick that one track that is gonna within 3 or 4 minutes, get people to go out and buy the album, and then you hear the real piece when you get there.
Yeah, well, this is the age-old contention between commercial success and artistic vision, and Ruben talked about it earlier with the classical composers. Do you sell out to get commercial success and money, which, let's face it, everyone needs, or you'll starve, or do you continue to stick to your vision, some of which may become commercially successful?
Well, and Maynard from Tool addressed it in the song "Hooker with a Penis," where he basically goes, "Of course, I sold my soul to make a record, and then you bought it."
Yeah, and then you bought it, and then I ate.
I
then
sold
I
out
had
to you.
food in my cupboard, and I could eat.
Yeah, it's like I sold myself to you guys, the fans, to make the record.
I can't remember who it was, but somebody once expounded upon the starving artist thing, saying, "I don't want to be a starving artist. I'm happy. I actually want to eat and have a house, and why should I live in poverty just because you want me to retain some artistic vision you expect of me?" So
and you do have purists on either side. Like I brought up the black metal bands earlier, where they have day jobs because, like, they don't want to compromise their artistic integrity and the music they want to make for the sake of commercial success. I mean, I think one of the guys, I forget what band he's in, Imperatus would know, but the guy's a mailman in his day-to-day life.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
But
I do think that's great.
But that's the whole idea. The fact, like I said, we were talking their vision.
Yeah, it's just, you either go purely with your musical vision, and sometimes you become a Rush and you can do it full time, and then sometimes you don't get that attention, and you don't get that commercial success, and you have to find some other way to support yourself while you do it. And yes, Soul Assassin, Lemmy's another one where Motorhead was the exact band he wanted it to be. And everybody loved it except the record labels.
I think the beauty is when you can do that and other people like it too.
Yeah.
Because you're making good shit. I mean, it doesn't just because it's your an artistic vision you have and you're sticking to it doesn't mean that it doesn't appeal to people and doesn't have. Look at Rush. We've mentioned a number of their songs that had pop crossover success because it doesn't have to be all, "Oh, I'm going to keep you at arm's length by making this so obscure." Doesn't have to be like that, but you still have to. You can retain an artistic vision and appeal to a lot of people too. It's possible to do both very easily.
But you do have to have a massive amount of musical talent to make that.
Yes, well, talent is always the key at the end of the day.
And
I have no problem with commercially successful artists who make great pop or pop rock music or whatever genre it may be, because they're good at that. It's not easy to compose a 3-minute song that will capture the hearts of millions of people and they'll listen to it for decades.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not that easy. If it was that easy, I would have done a million of them myself.
Right. Well, and we're going to talk about this one next week. I mean, Breaking the Law will be played until the sun goes cold. And it's just a 2-minute banger with a simple riff. And Living After Midnight off the same record, like that will be played on classic rock radio always and forever. And if you ask the real fans of the band, those aren't even two of the best songs on that record.
No, just the first one. I just get it. Headbangers Ball, growing up, MTV. That was in my house every night, every Friday night. Yeah, it was funny.
Underrated program.
I know.
You're lucky because I'd grown up in the decade before that where we didn't have anything like that, and you had to find either stuff on the radio.
Yeah, I was there first day MTV, and again, that's something I will always treasure. That I was there live when it came on the air.
Well, I always love that meme when it comes up every year, where it's just like I was like, MTV is X many years old. Thanks for 17 years of great music.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't get me wrong. I loved it when the video era appeared, but before that, it was, could you hear it in the radio? Has a friend got it? Could you read about it in a music paper and take a flyer on it because it might be good by buying it and you don't even know what it sounds like? So it was a slightly different, it's not bad, but the video era was, oh yeah, okay, that's great. That looks good. Nothing wrong with it. It became an art form in its own right, making music videos.
Absolutely, man. And, like I said, we could be here all day extolling the virtues of Rush, but I know you guys have stuff you got to do, and I got to go do some other stuff for the show in the meantime. So, I mean, we'll stop by saying, Rush is a band that you should absolutely listen to. Every single thing they do is brilliant in terms of musical quality. And even their more commercial stuff still has some pretty deep meaning behind it. So do yourselves a favor, go out and listen to these albums. And you will not be disappointed if you haven't heard them already. And Ruben, where can people find you?
I'm here on YouTube. I'm not on Twitter, no Twitter, but I find me on Discord, find me on Gilded. I have a YouTube channel. I have 5 of them, but I will be resurrecting them. I'm in the process right now of recalibrating my life. I have a lot of writings and books, poetry, music, books, articles, scientific papers that I'm doing because I work in STEM. And I've decided that I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to stand up and make a difference in this world. So I'm taking everything. I'm working in AI. I'm going to work to try and bring open, free source, ethical hacking and programming to the forefront. And in transparency. We need to know what's going on. That's one thing I'm going to do because I'm no longer going to be saying no more. I did, on the advice of Gary and Drinker, purchase a Paramount Plus membership, and I'm going to be watching Picard season 3. I want to know what it's like. I'm also going to watch other good shows, and I'll start watching Yellowstone and all these other ones to see what's going on here because I do.
I will
enjoy
say, Strange New Worlds and Picard season 3. You know what? They're actually pretty good,
and that's why I want to give it a chance because I want to love things again.
Yeah,
that aren't outside of women.
Let's face it. Star Trek is my number one love of all time.
It is my number one love. Star Trek will always be my number, because again, I was there when it came out, and that was my first. I wanted to go to space. I was like one of the kids that wrote in the campaign to make the space shuttle the Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
See, that's how important it was to me.
I grew up in the era when the shuttle was launching every 3 months. So, like, you know, we were always. I actually got to watch a shuttle launch live when I was 7. That was fucking cool. It's still one of the most vitally impressive things I've ever seen. But it all came for the foundation of to boldly know where no man has gone before. I took that to heart. I go right inside there, where no one's ever been. Absolutely, man. And but no, I absolutely go and check out his channel. He does, live streams every now and again, just, kind of updates and hanging out. And it's really a good time. You get some pretty interesting characters in chat, and it's just generally a good time.
And on Friday nights, Emmerfer Cocktail Lounge, Friday night after FNT, come join the hilarity. We had a great show last number 96. Matt Fowler was going to be leading up to show 100. We had Culture Casino, Comics Division. We had yourself.
3PO.
You had a lot
Jay
of people.
Was there. Yeah.
Jay was on the stream.
All 3 of us were on the show. Like it was
huge.
It was always a hilarious time to see who shows up for that and how.
Nick Weiser was there too. Shit, Toxic Mantler was there.
The main thing was I was there, and that's what counts.
That's true.
That's what counts. That's what counts. But yeah, we're here to have fun. That's one thing.
That's why we like to talk about things we like about. There's a lot of shows where people talk about things they don't like. We talk about stuff we like.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the point otherwise, I think.
And speaking of 70s, what do you got coming up?
Well, first things first, Gumby Spawn has been DMing me like crazy with stuff. And sorry, Gumby, I only just noticed these things now. But if you could share my screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's obviously showing me some of his Rush collection.
There we go.
Yeah. It's the Power Windows Tour program or poster. I don't know if it's maybe it's the program. Grace Under Pressure program. These are cool.
Yeah, this is nice really stuff.
Cool. Yeah, Q107 Toronto Rock Station is the one I used to listen to when I lived in Ontario, and Kim Mitchell's got a show in there. The Max Webster guitar player. Met him once, actually. Nice guy. But so thanks, Gumby, for sending those 3. He also reminded me of Alex Lifeson's wonderful Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction speech. If you've ever seen it. Blah 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 blah. But he does 3 minutes of blah blah, and it's the best speech I've ever heard. And the audience at first are bemused, and by the end they get it, and they're like, "Yeah, this is great," because he does it all with the inflections. He just says blah instead of the words. So thank you, Gumby Spawn, for sending those through. So as for me, you can find me at that 70s Rock Fan channel. 916 subscribers, working hard to get to the big 1,000, and that's only the beginning, I hope, because we're doing good stuff. So Monday, Pope, and hey, Ruben, you're welcome to join us as well. I'll send you the link. We're going to do Flash Gordon, 1980 classic cult camp science fiction movie, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Gordon's alive.
Gordon's alive. I've got that clip, so it's ready to go.
So one
3
of the
p.m.
best sci-fi B movies of all
Yes.
time.
Freeze, you bloody bastards.
Yeah.
Speaking of Queen, another brilliant
Speaking of
soundtrack from
Queen,
them.
yeah, their first full-length soundtrack, and one of the first mainstream but it was a big budget movies to have a rock band do the score. I mean, previously you'd had Pink Floyd doing some movie scores, but those were low budget independent movies. Queen went all in on this one, so that's going to be a lot of fun. 3 p.m.
Yeah, I'm
tomorrow.
going to have a lot of fun with that show.
Yeah, I've got tons of clips prepped. So Tuesday mornings now, starting this Tuesday. I hate this picture, but it's the only one I could find in a hurry. It was taken when I was up in a light aircraft. I'll be on Pop Culture Minefield doing the morning coffee with Brian slot, as it will be now, 10 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Mountain.
I love it. It's like you're in a helicopter. Well, how's the weather down there?
I was in a light aircraft, so I'm going to do something about that picture eventually, but I didn't have enough time, and Gary needed a picture straight away. So the slightly different flavor from my own shows. I'll be talking about some stuff I probably wouldn't do that It's Only Talk and Roll shows about. I think next Tuesday I'm really going to talk about my newfound love in the last couple of years for Korean live action TV and movies. So and the difference between those and current Western media and output. Why I like them so much. And then the following Monday is I'm going to be a big number with a 0 at the end, and it isn't 50. I hate to say. So I'm going to have a big birthday stream on my birthday.
Nice.
3 p.m. Mountain Time. There'll be a lot of guests. Obviously, you're all invited. You guys are invited. I will just talk about shit that I've loved over the years. Could be anything. Again, I'll prepare a lot of clips. No particular plan for that show. We'll just have lots of guests, I hope, and lots of chat and banter. I haven't got a thumbnail for it, but the next Monday after that, we're going to do another round of canon films.
Excellent.
We're going to do Death Wish. The Death Wish movies. So already reached out to Razor and Austin and Tom and the gang. So that's and I'll be on a bunch of other shows, but that is the upcoming stuff.
Huh. My birthday's on the 6th this year. It's March 6th.
Yeah, you and I are both we're both Pisces. A bit fishy.
Yeah, we're fishy.
Something fishy about us. We're Pisces.
You know who else has a birthday in March that I just found out recently is Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers. March 8th is his birthday.
Oh, really?
And then my birthday was only a couple of days ago. My birthday was on the 10th.
Happy birthday. Yeah, I share a birthday, or I did until she died, with Elizabeth Taylor. So that was.
Oh wow!
Oh shit! So what's this going to be? What number?
Well, if it's not a 5 and it's not a 7,
oh shit!
I'm going to be 60 on February 27th.
Well, I'll be 55 on March 6th, so I'm right behind.
Yeah, just a bairn.
And then I just turned 36.
But we have the nice beards.
Young whippersnappers.
It's true.
No, it's a big one, but we'll have some fun. I'm not dead yet.
No.
That has to be the intro of I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. Well, I'm actually.
Yeah, you have to do that.
I am clipping a bunch of Monty Python to use on that show, and that was one of the scenes. I'm not dead yet. Excellent. Shut up. And there's the other one that I love.
You'll be stone dead in a moment.
I could just do an entire Monty Python thing, but there's the one where the Gumbies.
Yeah.
And the Gumbies Theatre presents Mary, Queen of Scots. And they spend like 4 minutes trying to kill Mary. It's Mary, Queen of Scots, take this. And they're trying to kill her.
Interesting.
And at the end, he goes, I think she's dead. No, I'm not.
It would be interesting if people did memes videos of old people and put your face on it. You know, it'd be nice.
I'm sure they probably will. I'm
sure the Legion of Memers will be all over that.
Legion of Memers unite!
You're nobody until you've been memed by the Legion of Memers.
That's the thing, yeah. But again,
anyway,
that's yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say thanks, Pope, for doing this
no, thanks
show.
for being
It's
here,
been
man.
fun.
This has been outstanding. And as for this channel, next week we are going to be covering the immortal classic that is British Steel by Judas Priest. Absolutely phenomenal record. And while not one of my personal favorites, it certainly stood the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're definitely going to go into that. And after that, I believe we are going to be doing Pantera. Finally.
Ooh,
Finally,
nice.
a little over a year into the show, we're finally getting to
Alice.
Pantera. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Other than that, you can catch me on Vets Talking Tuesday over on Vets Talking's channel. Great guy. You should absolutely check his channel out. Ruben's been on there. We've had a whole bunch of different guests. And then at the end of this month, we are going to be doing a movie review, another war movie review that you guys voted for. We're going to be doing Full Metal Jacket. So I'll let you guys know
nice.
with the exact time and date when I figure that
I
out.
need to be there. That's one. That's my movie.
But that stream's going to be fucking
That's
awesome.
my Kubrick film of all time. That's the one that gets me. It's the most gritty, realistic one of all time.
And I know you guys really liked the last one we did on Veterans Day for All Quiet on the Western Front. So that one's going to be an absolute epic. And then coming up, not too distant future, towards the end of March, probably, we're going to be doing the history of rock and roll, 1955 to 1970. So that is going to be an absolutely huge show. I'm going to see who we can get on to talk about that. And it's just going to be an absolutely kick-ass time. It's probably going to be a long stream.
There's so many things that happened during the time.
Absolutely.
The birth of rock and roll, Jimi Hendrix, Elvis Presley, the whole the use of media and influence, and how it changed the way that music. Oh God, this is so
the
many
invention
things.
of the teenager.
Absolutely.
Until rock and roll, there was no such thing as the teenager.
Yeah,
They were just
kind of a kid.
There were adults and younger people training to be adults.
That's true. That's true.
But hopefully you guys will join us all for that, because that's going to be an outstanding time. And until then, take care, stay safe. I love you all.
Cheers, everybody.
I'll catch you next time.
Good night.